We're going to start with House Bill 1018. The Honorable John Hunt, my friend who I see to and from all the time lately. You're either here or I'm there. Go ahead, Representative.
For the record, I'm Representative John Hunt from Ringe. And we'll start with the easy bill.
Always the way.
And this is, dare I say, housekeeping, okay? In which we, in terms of there are several sections, in terms of with a total amount of 6, all the way up to 8 sections of the bill. So each one of them is just a little clarification, updating, like section 1, we didn't, one holding on premise like wasn't necessary. That's already in the statute. Off sale, on sale, those are old terms we don't use anymore. So we know this on premise and off premise. Then section 3, it was a word that's technically not in the dictionary. And so it's inaccessible. We did that again, section 5. Then the liquor, now we do allow, we have a micro liquor, and let alone we just have a bill we sent you, I don't know what this, that to allow for home distilling. So section 6 is just correct. If you're licensed, distilling is now fuzzy if somebody's self-distilling. And then section 7 is the cigar bar, and you can see down at the bottom, it's the issue which we're trying to address is the hookah bars that are out there. And that came in, that was a later amendment, because by the time this whole bill was going through the process, that was kind of too late to add that, but so that was added by the Commerce Committee. And other than that,
Any
simple.
questions? Senator Ennis.
Good morning, Representative.
Good morning,
Nice to
Representative.
see you. Hookah. I'm reminded of Jefferson Airplane's song, some hookah smoking character, White Rabbit. So, hookah's tobacco, right? These are tobacco products.
Correct.
So, as with cigar bars, we're sort of permitting smoking, and we're kind of recognizing that indoors is an okay thing. And I know we've been doing that with cigar bars.
Correct.
I'm just wondering about the distinction here. Cigar bars is one thing. Are hookahs and those clientele different? Or do we expect they have the same customer profile? And I ask this because I've heard concerns from some that it might be a different group of customers. They could tend to be a little more rowdy. It could result in some issues that could affect cigar bars. That may be just speculation, but I promised I'd bring that up this morning.
So what I can say is that they're already out there,
Yeah.
and they were operating under the expectation that they were using the cigar bar license.
Right.
So the issue was either we shut it down and ban it, or that we pass a statute that reflected the cigar bar statute and had the same hookah requirements.
Okay.
So I would say if you look on page 2, the Roman numeral 2, the key element here is that we're to mirror the cigar bar statute.
Yeah.
We then would want to have the same requirements that it's not all about selling glasses of wine or whiskey in their establishment, that it's about that they are ultimately selling hookah pipes and hookah tobacco. And that's why you see we lifted the exact same language for the cigar, and we added hookah right to it. So that in either case, they've got to be selling 60% of the revenue has got to be not being a
So it's your
licensed
contention that this is
establishment.
already out there and we're just capturing it now.
We are now
Okay.
so sort of backwards way to do things, but it had occurred, and yes, so we just want to make clear that okay, yes, they can continue that, but that they are still under that 60% requirement.
Thank you. That was helpful.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. We're all set. You have a great day. I'll see you in a few minutes.
I'll be back.
Okay, I'll be back. Maura Weston. Morning, Ms. Weston. How you doing?
Good morning. Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. My name is Mara Weston, and I'm here this morning on behalf of Advanced Inhalation Rituals, and we support HB 1018 as amended by the House. My focus will be on Section 7 of the bill. As Representative Hunt explained, it adds hookah products to the cigar bar statute. This is a clarification of the law. The reason for this is that hookah lounges are currently operating under the cigar bar statutes, as he explained. And in order to receive a license, the establishment must generate 60% of the quarterly revenue from the sale of cigars. And we wanted to clarify here that although hookah lounges may offer cigars, we want a regulatory construct with which they can comply by adding them into the 60% requirement. We also believe that this will allow the state to take proper enforcement action. I would add that in doing this, we also put in a section that requires hookah lounges to comply with the same hourly restrictions as those imposed upon establishments that sell alcohol. And that will hopefully address that concern that it's a late night place, perhaps a rowdier place after bars have closed. So we're hoping to basically create a construct for compliance and enforcement. I'm happy to take any questions.
No, we're good.
Okay,
Thank you very
thank you very much.
Great morning.
Appreciate it.
Does anyone else wish to testify on 1018? Seeing none. There you go, John. We're back in session. We're going to hear 1380 relative to brew pub licenses. Again, the Honorable John Hunt.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Representative John Hunt from Ridge, New Hampshire. And when I put this bill in last year, I thought it was going to be a simple bill. and then realized that we've kind of stirred up a hornet's nest. And I will be the first to say that I think that to resolve this in a way that we can clarify in our statutes the intent of the legislature. And I believe, and this is like, listen, I get a giggle in my committee when I say this, but when it came to brew pubs, that did happen before me. So I know I've been doing liquor a long time. I just want you to know that I did not have anything to do with passing the legislation of brew pubs. But at the time, it was certainly a violation of the three-tier system, because now you have a beverage manufacturer that is self-distributing to its own location and has a restaurant and going from there. So as much as I understand the concern of the distributors and wanting to reassure that we're not going to overturn the three-tier, that tied houses is a real issue, and that we don't want to revisit what happened back in 1934 when they made the decision to pass the statute in the first place. So all we were trying to address is that the one violator of the three-tier is the brew pub. And I think that it absolutely makes sense to clarify in our statutes that we are aware that they are a violation, that we should acknowledge that this is an awkward situation we're creating about the three-tier system. But having said that, I could say is that one of my very first pieces of legislation, way back when, was Castle Springs and Lucknow beer. Does anybody in the room remember Lucknow? So Lucknow beer, they were feeling very frustrated with the three-tier statute at the time, and they wanted to be able to self-distribute their beer. Now, it seems a little ironic given that more recently we now have a Nano who's self-distributing. We've now, I think since the COVID, we found that everybody wants to kind of trample on this three-tier limitations, and we want distributing and delivering and a lot of cross product line issues here. But that at that time, they negotiated with the beer distributors, and we came up with that a de minimis. I mean, how much is it really worth it? They're going to self-distribute before they really need to be using a distributor. And the number we came up was 5,000 gallons. So when it came to this particular statute, the bill, and which was the idea that we were going to allow a brew pub to self-distribute to its own restaurants, and it also has this ownership, which was, really the fundamental issues of the whole three-tier concept, which is that the tied houses, they didn't want to have the huge mother beer manufacturer, not mentioning any names, own their own bars and be distributing their beer to them directly. So that's why we created this three-tier with the whole tight houses, because we didn't want that dedicated thing that you would go in there and they own the shop and they would underprice their beer. Having said that, when I was negotiating, they would say, listen, the 5,000 is, if it's under 5,000, there's not any money to be made for a distributor. It's fine. And that the idea is they're self-distributing to the point where they're going to realize that they really don't want to be self-distributing, because it's really a pain to do it, and that it's costly and inefficient, and it's much better to have a professional distributor distributing, and that number was set at 5. So when it came to this issue and this bill, yes, we put the bill in at 5,000 because that was the running governor of saying is you can't exceed that, okay? And the 5,000 is the same number when it came back to way back when and when I put this 5,000, seemed like a reasonable number. Obviously, the beer distributors, showed concern, so we said, okay, we'll go to 2,500. Which is, some people say, whoa, 2,500 gallons, that seems like so much, or how many cases of beer? But at the end of the day, when it comes to somebody in the business of making beer and selling beer, it's not a lot of beer. And so the issue is coming down to is so that they can self-distribute up to 5,000, but, we're saying no, brew pub can self-distribute now. But no, you can't self-distribute to yourselves, to these other establishments. And then some question whether you're even allowed to own that beverage manufacturer, because of the conflict of three-tier. So I think that if the desire here is to sort this out and be clear and identify exactly what we're doing or why we do it, why we have this exemption, I think that is a worthy project to take on. However, I'm not, can we do that in 2 weeks? Well, I pulled rabbits out of my hat before, so we can make things happen and be efficient and that's what the concern is, okay? But at the end of the day, there was no doubt in the House Commerce mind that that as much as someone would say a brew pub is really a beer manufacturer, and therefore shouldn't be in the business of doing it. Well, they're already doing it. They already have a restaurant. They're already violating the 3-tier. But that the other perception was that a brew pub is a restaurant that happens to, instead of making their own cakes, their own desserts, they make their own beer, and they want to be able to ensure that they can get that beer out to other locations. And if we had this governor of 2,500, like I say, that's amended all the way down. It seemed like a de minimis number. It seemed like a reasonable compromise. But if it needs to be clarified that that is a compromise and is that we are acutely aware that we're trampling on the 3-tier system, then I think it's worth clarifying it. But at the end of the day, we believe in keeping it simple. Let's narrow our language, let's narrow the resolution, try to solve, but we want to be pro-business. And we don't want to pass legislation that only protects a handful of people, and that we want to have legislation that is enabling so other people can do it, other people can take an opportunity, knowing full well that at the end of the day, we have this, the distribution system, and if they were getting really good at it and they really want to make a lot of it, then they've got to change their business model, and work with the beer distributors. And with that, I will end my testimony. Perfect. And I have to run off to my own committee, so I'll be back. Thank you. Yeah.
How's Lost Cowboy Brewing doing?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for your time this morning. Lost Cowboy is doing well. We're getting very close. Construction's all but complete at this point, so I'm really hoping within the next 3 weeks to a month at the very max, we will be open there on Amherst Street.
Great.
So obviously I'm speaking in support of House Bill 1380. My name is Ian Buckley. I'm the Vice President of Michael Timothy's Dining Group. It's a small family-owned restaurant group here in southern New Hampshire. We have 7 locations, working on opening up our 8th right now, which would be Lost Cowboy Brewing Company. It's the old satellite campus for Southern New Hampshire University down on Amherst Street in Nashua, which we purchased about 3 years ago, just under 3 years ago, and have been converting into it's a 17,000 square foot building that we're converting into a restaurant, bar, and brewery. Now, when we first purchased that building and kind of decided on the concept that we were looking for, we went to the New Hampshire Liquor Enforcement, the New Hampshire Liquor Commission, let them know what we were thinking about doing there. And, at that point, obviously they knew and we understood that since we hold on-premise liquor licenses at our restaurants, we were prohibited from opening a physical brew pub under that license type. So they gave us a path forward. They said that we would need to obtain a nano brewing license as well as an on-premise license there on the site, and that would, in essence, accomplish the same thing. If you look at us from the outside in, we are a brew pub. We're a large restaurant, bar, and a small brewery attached. The intention of the brewery that we put in there is not to be distributing on any mass level. It's more or less to produce enough beer to hopefully sell on 7 to 8 of our draft lines there. We'll have 16 draft lines, so we'll still be bringing in beer from many distributors, both on draft and in can. So it's not like we're even going to be producing enough to take care of all the beer on site there. So we moved forward under the understanding that we would be going forward for like I said, a nano brewing license and an on-premise license when the time came. We started construction and we invested over $14 million in building out that restaurant. We really stuck our neck out there and took a chance and kind of bet the future of our company on doing something special there in Nashua that we could really get excited about, we could really be proud of, and I think we've accomplished that. We've hired at this point 50 to 60 employees for that location. We're looking to hire another 20 to 30 here in the next couple of weeks, which puts us well over 500 employees there in that southern New Hampshire market. And the problem that we're facing now is, I'm sure, as you all know, there's also another bill that's been brought forward to eliminate the nano brewing license category altogether, which is fine for most of those nano breweries because they're able to just obtain another license under that, under that tier. We are not. So we really need this brew pub bill to be passed, and in some version of it, I understand that there's an amendment that the distributors and New Hampshire Restaurant Lodging Association have been discussing over the last 24 hours that would limit the amount of other licenses that we're able to distribute to. I'm fine with that. I'm in support of that because, again, our intention was never to start distributing mass amounts of beer around the state. If we can brew enough to keep up with the volume there, I'll be very happy because it's I'm learning that side of things for the first time, and it takes a lot of time, energy, and skill to brew a decent beer, as I'm learning very quickly. So that's kind of our stance on it. Like I said, we have focused all of our time, energy, money over the last 2.5 years into creating something there that I think can be very special. But recently here, just our path, at least our long-term path forward, has kind of been tossed into question here with the elimination of the nano brewing license type and the question stirring around whether this whole brew pub bill is going to be moving forward. So obviously, I would ask you, for your consideration and support of this bill. Thank you. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Good morning. Thank you for your testimony. I have compassion for your plight, and I have been fully aware of both sides of the issue. And that's why, as most of you know, I have been saying, please find a compromise. We're all friends here. Find a compromise. That's what this is about. And I believe, as you mentioned, a compromise has been reached, but the language is just not drafted yet. So I am hoping that by the time we get through this, that everybody will be reasonably happy.
That's all we can ask for.
Okay.
Senator Shanley? Thanks for living the dream and helping New Hampshire. Jobs are good. Seeing no other questions, have a great day, Ian.
I appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Joe Bellavance. Good morning. Sure.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. For the record, my name is Joe Bellavance. I'm the president of Bellavance Beverage Company.
And I'm Scott Shire, the executive director of the Beer Distributors Association.
And I think just the crux of our concern was never to prohibit or thwart MT's Dining Group from opening their location. Personally, I've been friends with them for a long time, so this was a very awkward, somewhat, I guess, situation to be in. The real concern was that it would allow for expanded locations, tied house, not necessarily the beer that they were going to produce on their premise and sell their premise. So that was why, or where our opposition came from, was the expansion to really unlimited number of other potential locations. That would impact our business. That would also impact the business for a number of the New Hampshire brewers that we represent, because potentially those draft lines that are available now would go away just based on the economics of brewing your own beer and selling it to yourself. It's a pretty compelling argument economically, and so that was really the nexus of our concern. So as mentioned earlier, I think we have the basis for some compromise, which I think is great news for all involved. So I'll ask Scott if he has any comments.
Sure, thanks, Joe, and thank you, members of the committee. I appreciate your patience as we try to work out some compromise language on this fairly complicated piece of legislation. And I think just to kind of clarify some of what Representative Hunt said earlier, this issue is about the three-tier system, but it's not necessarily about a brew pub operating in all three tiers. The difference is in cross-tier ownership is they're operating under a manufacturer's license and they get a privilege for retail and just self-distribution. A restaurant license is a retail license and they have the ability to sell their product on and off premise. The difference here between the carve-outs for the three-tier system that Representative Hunt talked about is now we're actually taking a license who's a manufacturer and also owns a retail license and allowing them to own both, which goes against the cross-tier or prohibited interest clause in 17911. And without getting into too much detail that would probably bore you to tears, I'll just say that we're working on that issue. But this is a larger issue than just distribution of 2,500 barrels of beer. It's really not a lot of beer, as was pointed out earlier. It's about 35,000 cases. And the issue really here is about the ecosystem, which is the three-tier system and the regulation that everybody in the state who has an alcohol license operates under. So if you make a change for one particular reason or another, there are ripple effects that can affect everybody else. Some of those consequences are unintended, and some of them could be negative. We certainly don't want to set a precedent. We've had 90 years of great success with this system. We've seen craft breweries thrive like never before. 12 years ago, we had a dozen or so in the state. There's over 150 now. Obviously, the system's working well, and we don't want to mess with it. As Joe pointed out, we're partners with retailers, with craft brewers. We're all working together. We all have the same goals, and obviously we're pro-business. We want to see everybody be successful and bring in more revenue for the state. So I think that, the proposal that's been made makes sense. I don't think we need to look at the whole three-tier system, in one piece or one part. We just need to focus in on this particular issue and tweak the language. So again, not about self-distribution or the beer. It's about the system itself and everybody who's playing in it. And I will say that cake is not regulated the same way as alcohol, just to make that clear. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes, Senator Shannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do have a slight complication in that SB 137, I believe, has passed over to the House, has not yet been heard. So that may have an effect here, obviously, as was pointed out. If that's what you're counting on and the nano brewery goes away, that would be problematic. Can you describe for me, you gave a good overview, but could you give me in really practical or concrete terms, who would this hurt and how?
So in terms of the interplay with SB 137?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so SB 137 is essentially simplifying the brewery, the manufacturing code and reducing the number of license types that exist, right? This is something the craft brewers have been working on for the past couple of years. I think it's something that's in the interest of the Liquor Commission, everybody else. If we can simplify, that's always a good thing. So if that bill were to pass, which I believe it will later on this afternoon as they're hearing in House Commerce, then the nano brewery license goes away, and it would affect Mr. Buckley and his organization because they wouldn't have anything that they could do to operate their business. Now, the nano brewer is an option for a cross-tier situation because it was left out of 17911 when that particular license was first introduced. And I believe that was Representative Hunt's bill for the nano brewer probably 13, 14 years ago. So it happened. It was a loophole that nobody really intended, but that was a way for the Michael Timothy Dining Group to open legally because it was left out of 17911. So obviously if that license goes away, then that loophole goes away too. So what we're trying to do here is create a way to legalize cross-tier ownership so that Michael Timothy Group and others can own restaurants and own one brew pub if they want to make their own beer. And I think it's a reasonable compromise given the fact that we already have beverage manufacturer retail outlets that are an extension of a brewery and wine manufacturer retail outlets that are an extension of a winery that allow retail and no manufacturing. So this is a reverse of that, but I think it makes sense because everybody's in parity and it seems fair.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks very much. Does anyone else wish to testify on? Come on up.
Thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Introduce yourself for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And honorable committee members, Chief Mark Armaganian, Director of New Hampshire Liquor Commission's Enforcement and Licensing Division. With me today is Lieutenant Matt Culver, who runs our licensing unit and is in charge of administration. Senator, you couldn't have said it any better. You have two friends in the room right now that are trying to get work done and are on a collision course, if you will. There has been so much work going on with this proposed bill. It rivals some of the bigger bills this session, to be honest about it. Matt has actually put a lot of work with not only Mike Summers and Restaurant and Lodging, but Scott Shire and his group with the wholesalers. And let's not keep out the Grocers Association also, who are all good friends of themselves and ours, which is a weird place that everybody likes the regulator in the room. But we've gotten there in 7 years. So as we move forward with this proposed bill and some of the language in it, one thing that I know you all have heard me say before is that we are trying to make this easier and not clunky and not cumbersome. And at times it gets nauseating saying that, but we have to keep reminding ourselves of that. As we looked at what was proposed after these two groups had actually conceded with each other and come to common ground, we found it our business to get involved and help navigate through proposed verbiage, if you will. I think there was some stuff that you'll see in your email, Mr. Chairman, that is obvious, that's already stated in statute that we can get through and might in years to come run into each other in interpretation. So where it comes to prohibited interest and things along those lines. So Matt, I'll let Matt speak on those points, but I think we're at a really good place that within a day or two, we can get you the verbiage that you're looking for to make this work. Again, you have 2 to 3 parties here to include us that really are trying to make this work. So, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, committee members. Again, I'm Lieutenant Matthew Culver, New Hampshire State Liquor Commission, Division of Enforcement and Licensing. I couldn't have said it any better myself. I believe that we all done extensive work on this proposal, and the correct fix to this issue is appropriately in the brew pub statute. The reason this statute was selected for this and not the beverage manufacturer is because the brew pub license, when upon passage, it was intended for a small manufacturer to provide enough beverage to supply their restaurant. So this statute is the only one that in and of itself crosses the 3 tiers. It has the manufacturing component to it, and it has the restaurant component to it. So adding additional on-premises or off-premise licenses to this statute only makes sense in this particular circumstance. The contention on this comes down to the distribution, really. And that's what the language that we, over the last 24 hours, have compromised on. And I've seen some of the language. We're modifying it a little bit to make it work ideally for the wholesalers and manufacturers and retailers. Be happy to answer any questions you might have.
More of a comment, but thank you also for helping. You made my day because I've been, again, I use the word friends, and I really wanted a compromise. That's what we need to do here. There's value in all sides of this issue, and I'm really excited that we're going to be able to close this. So thank you.
Thank you, guys. I guess that's all our questions. Anyone else wish to testify in 1380? Come on up.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mike Summers. I'm the president and CEO of the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. Really just wanted a couple of quick points, but just wanted to confirm that there has been a lot of discussion where there's kind of compromise, and I just want to touch on kind of what the parameters of that compromise are so that we're kind of all on the same page. But to really simplify this bill and where the impetus for this coming forward with Representative Hunt was really because of we're trying to get to common ownership between restaurants and brew pubs. That's the crux of the issue. Can certainly appreciate that we're haggling over the details of how that's going to be worked out. But ultimately, right now, we agree with the concept that, a restaurant group or a brew pub group can have common ownership between the two, and that if a brew pub is licensed, they can only distribute to one other location. In that case, we're fine with that, so I just want to confirm that for the committee. Again, I just wanted to reinforce also on behalf of Mr. Buckley from Michael Timothy's Dining Group that if SB 137 does pass in the House, he is in a very precarious position, and I think he shared with me, and I don't want to misspeak, but I think he shared with me his investment at this point is about $12 million. So this is not a small investment. So we're certainly, I just wanted to impress upon the committee the importance of this, particularly for his business, but more broadly for the industry. So I just wanted to share those thoughts and confirm that we are in agreement on the concept, and now we're haggling over the details, and look forward to working with, again, our friends, Scott Shire and his group, the brewers, distributors, and liquor enforcement. So with that, I will close, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Seeing no questions, have a great day.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to testify in 1380? Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Kate Fry. I'm the Vice President of Advocacy. I wasn't planning to testify reading this bill. I was going back and forth and also had some inner struggle with it. So I'm really glad to hear that there is a compromise to be worked out. We are concerned anytime someone tries to weaken or dismantle the three-tier system, but we do understand the economic arguments in this case. So I'm glad we're on a good path because all of these people are my friends too. So I want to keep it that way.
Thank you very much, Kate. Seeing no questions, have a great day. Anyone else wish to testify in 1380 or change their mind and want to? Anyways, we are all set. That adjourns that hearing.
We have
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, honorable members of the committee. I'm excited to introduce this bill to you today. HB 1227 is a common sense bipartisan bill that extends the time that alcoholic beverages can be served on site from 1 to 2 a.m. statewide, and it also enables cities and towns to authorize a 3 a.m. limit. This bill will give bars, restaurants, and event venues more freedom to serve their customers, expand nightlife opportunities, and encourage people to patronize New Hampshire businesses. Currently, New Hampshire has one of the earliest statewide closing times in the country. Most states set a 2 a.m. last call, including many of our neighbors here in the Northeast. Allowing municipalities to approve a 2 a.m. last call in 2013 was a step in the right direction. However, there have been no changes to this law since. HB 1227 would align our liquor laws more closely with our neighbors and make our state more competitive. For example, someone who is looking for a destination for their corporate retreat or their wedding might be more likely to choose New Hampshire as their destination over Mass or Vermont. With more young people looking to build their careers here and tourism being such a large part of our economy, I think it's time to take another look at closing time. While public safety remains an important concern, and I'm sympathetic to many of the concerns that have been raised, I do not believe, based on the research that I've done, that this bill will have a negative impact on our communities. I also have a friend from House Commerce who will present more stats going in depth on this issue, but I did want to call out that when the RSA was last updated to extend last call, customers had far fewer options for a safe ride home than they do now. Currently, we have seen a lot of growth with ride-sharing services, and there is also local taxi services, as well as options to ask a friend to be a designated driver. So really, there's no excuse for anyone to be out under the influence behind the wheel at any time of night, whether it's midnight, 1, 2, or 3. It's just not acceptable and shouldn't happen. And thankfully, with the options we have, there is really no need to these days. Additionally, we've also seen educational campaigns as well as increased law enforcement that have been successful at driving drunk driving rates lower. When you look at data across the country, there's really no clear relationship between later closing times and higher rates of drunk driving. And something that we also saw was that drunk driving increased steadily during COVID, as well as other quality of life issues when bars and restaurants were closed altogether, only offering limited service. So that shows that there's a lot more complex factors at play that impact drunk driving rather than closing time alone. Additionally, we've seen that communities with more commercial activity and more foot traffic are more engaged. They're more likely to be concerned about the welfare of their communities and look out for each other. So by increasing these opportunities for tourism as well as encouraging people to come and move here, we will see residents who are more engaged and want to see their communities thrive. Lastly, I do want to reiterate that allowing bars to serve drinks later is not a permission slip for unsafe behavior, and venues can and should still be held responsible for enabling customers to drive home drunk, over-serving, serving to minors, all of these things that shouldn't go on at all. They'll still be held responsible for, so moving it back an hour doesn't impact any of those laws. Lastly, we must continue to empower our local police to enforce the law and keep our community safe. And I think that we can embrace the live free or die spirit while still supporting law and order in our communities. In closing, this bill is about choice. It expands commerce options for businesses statewide and gives cities more options to meet the needs of their residents. If a business owner doesn't want to stay open till 2 a.m., they don't have to, just as they can close prior to closing time now. HB 1227 simply puts more control over closing time where it belongs, in the hands of local communities, the businesses that serve them and their customers. I'm happy to take any questions as well.
Thank you, Representative. Go ahead, Senator Shanley.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Representative, for bringing this forward and introducing it to us. I have a couple of questions about, or one real question about what motivated you to bring this forward. I understand that communities now, in the bill as it is, would have the option of allowing this or not. But were you hearing from communities or from businesses, both or neither?
Both. So I had heard feedback from some of my friends who own bars and restaurants in New Hampshire, small business owners who want to attract a younger, diverse crowd, and they find that a lot of our options in New Hampshire are more limiting compared to our neighboring states. And I'd also heard from others both here in New Hampshire as well as friends from out of state who would like to travel more to New Hampshire, would like to consider moving, but there's a perception that New Hampshire is a little bit maybe behind the times in some of these laws. And when you look at the patchwork of closing times across the country, we see that this is one area where New Hampshire kind of sticks out in terms of having that earlier closing time. So it's a concern both for the health of our future state. I think we need more young people to come here. We want to attract more industry. We want to attract more people who are going to come and start a business, raise their families. And I think this is one small step that we can take in the right direction to just making New Hampshire a more appealing place for young people to move and engage in that kind of commercial activity.
Thank you. And if I might follow up, you mentioned this would be a way of attracting younger families and folks to come to our state. And you also mentioned that Commerce folks might have better, provide some statistics. But if you do know, is there any evidence that there is a correlation between later openings of venues and younger population or drawing younger population?
So I don't believe there are any stats that show a one-to-one correlation necessarily. This was more from sort of the anecdata that I'd heard from young professionals and young families. And this was one area that kind of kept coming up in conversation as far as like what holds people back from choosing New Hampshire over, say, Massachusetts.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative. You did an excellent job. I have no questions. I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jared Sullivan. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to testify today. So, as a previous speaker said, this is sort of a common sense bill. And so I guess to answer that question of why would it be a common sense bill, I have a few things for you to consider. One is New Hampshire is one of 10 states that doesn't allow alcohol to be served after 1 o'clock. Every state in the country, or 40 states in the country, are 2 a.m. or later. New Hampshire, I would argue, is at a competitive disadvantage. And this is actually the primary reason why I'm here testifying in favor of this bill. I was kind of the main person who pushed this through the Commerce Committee on the other side of the wall. And we can all see the demographic problems that are happening in New Hampshire. We have the second oldest population. We're among the fastest aging populations. We have a particularly low fertility rate. All of those things are combining together to cause shortages of labor that we're already seeing, particularly where I'm from, which is up north. And so do I think this is going to solve that problem? No, I think there's a lot of things we as a legislative body need to do to address this, but I think this is one of the things to make New Hampshire more appealing to younger people. I was speaking with somebody who runs a research program over at Dartmouth-Hitchcock, and she said to me that they really struggle to get like postdocs to come over here and do research because, quite frankly, the words they use is, yeah, it's just too sleepy here. It's not very fun. And we all know what I'm talking about when I'm saying that. I see you guys all smiling. And the reality is it's true. One of my best friends, he and his wife were living in Boston. And Boston, we all know, is super expensive. So they were looking at different cities to move to. And they actually came, I encouraged them to come look at Manchester because she's a hairdresser and she has her own studio and she wanted to be close to Boston so she could still get her clients. And they came to Manchester and they're like, yeah, New Hampshire's just not it. Like, it just feels too like slow and quiet and like not exciting. And so they ended up in Providence. And so, I mean, those are two anecdotes, but I think they illustrate the point that I'm trying to get at. And so we can see this sort of demographic train wreck coming from a mile away. Like, we don't have enough young people. Where I live, there's already shortages of healthcare as there's in many parts of the state. We don't have enough teachers. I mean, all of this sort of stuff. And so we need to, if we aren't going to have enough children as a domestic population, we need younger people to move here and start their families and bring their children with them. And I think one of the ways we can do that is when somebody is graduating from college and they're looking for a fun place to live, we want them to consider staying in New Hampshire. We don't want them to be going to Dartmouth and be like, I can't wait to get out of here because this is just a boring place to be. So that's like my primary motivation. I know there's some people who are going to speak behind me who are not in support of this, and that's fine. We should hear all the different perspectives, and I support that. But the idea that this is a no-brainer, that there's going to be serious crime or even DUIs, I wanted to do a good faith effort to try to address this. And so what I did is I actually just went and looked into like a lit review, actual academic research that's published and peer reviewed. And some of these things I'm gonna talk about here don't support my position, but I think what you'll see taking away from this is there is not a clear consensus that this actually leads to increased crime or even increased DUIs. And so The first study was in Minnesota, in a Minnesota city, can't speak, sorry, and they extended their last call by 1 hour. And they saw a significant increase in the number of DUI stops in the next 6 months following the charge. So this supposedly doesn't really help my argument. And that's why I'm including it here, so you know that I'm not just cherry picking. While the number of people arrested increased, the average blood level of those arrested was not significantly different than before the change. Researchers found that police officers on patrol were more likely to initiate stops following the change in the law and more likely to initiate sobriety tests during those stops. In addition, officers were charged, leading to more officers being available after bar times closed. So they scheduled more officers to work during these times. The researchers concluded that by anticipating a problematic outcome from this change, police actions might have actually contributed to the increased number of DUI stops, though not in the incidence of drunk driving itself. A California study about the number of restaurants in a given area, but not the number of bars, was related to the number of people drinking and driving. So this isn't necessarily about extending hours, but rather what the researchers found was that more restaurants serving alcohol, the more restaurants that serve alcohol in a given area, the higher rate of drinking and driving. But that was not the case for bars, which is interesting because in New Hampshire, we don't allow bars. We only allow restaurants that serve alcohol. And despite that, researchers cited earlier studies that showed across multiple states that the increased availability of alcohol in general led to an increase in alcohol-related crashes. This does not help my argument, but I'm trying to show you good faith. They concluded that in part, DWI appears to be less a function of the structure of alcohol availability in communities and more a problem of individual proclivities to engage in deviant behavior. And finally, in Ontario, Canada, they amended the Liquor License Act and they allowed bars to open from basically what we're doing, 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. And the purpose of this study was to evaluate, this is the exact core of what we're trying to get at here. The purpose of the study was to evaluate and impact the extended drinking hours in Ontario on motor vehicle collisions and other injuries admitted to regional trauma units based in Ontario Trauma Registry. This was a quasi-experimental design, and so what they did was they analyzed data on a monthly basis for the number of admissions into the local hospitals, and in the 4 hours previous to this change in the law, and then the 3 hours afterwards. And so they did it from time slots from 11 to 12, 12 to 1, 1 to 2, and 2 to 3, which was, the new hour that would have been impacted by this change. The results say that no significant pre-post increase was found for the 2 to 3 a.m. period, commensurate with the introduction of the extended drinking hours. But decreases were found in the 11 to 12 and 1 to 2 a.m. For non-motor vehicle injuries, a significant increase was found from 2 to 3 a.m. period. These observations are consistent with those of other studies of small changes in alcohol availability. So I think these were just 3 samples, and like I said, I try to show you a good faith effort to give you a both sides approach. But if you go through this, and I encourage you to do so, you're not going to find a clear consensus among the literature. And so for me, it's like, New Hampshire, we like to talk about being live free or die. We like talking about promoting commerce. Like we hear that all the time. I'm sure you guys hear it on your side of the wall. We hear it on my side of the wall. People say it when they speak at the well. But we do regulate a lot of things in a pretty onerous way, and it's not clear that we're getting the benefits we think we're getting from that. And I think that this is one of those examples where we can just become in line with Vermont, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, which all allow 2 a.m. or later. The only one that doesn't is Maine. And we have to compete with those states for other younger people to move here. And one of the things they're going to consider are more exciting places where it feels like they can meet new friends, make new friends in the communities that they move to. Finally, I'll just say, this came out of the Commerce Committee with a 20-0 vote on what was on the consent calendar. We debated it. We ended up there. So I hope that you guys can consider it. I think the time is now, and we still have the local option if they want to extend later and try to experiment with it, as some states, some towns have already done the 2 a.m. But 2 a.m. it's literally going to bring us up to basically the national standard, and I don't think the world has collapsed in any of the other states in this country that have done so. So with that, I will take any questions.
So when you said an aging population, you were referring to Senator Innes, not me, right?
No, you look very youthful. I love it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
I was in Nashville and I did see the youth moving down, 20, 30. Really, it's a thriving town and there's other places like that. So I do appreciate what you have to say and we'll think about it. Do you have any questions, Senator Innes?
No, just a comment. I would say some of the best times have been after 2 a.m., but some of the worst as well.
I lived in Chicago at one point.
We're gonna
I
give
always
you-
regretted the 5 a.m. Bar
I
night.
don't know about 5 a.m. Senator Shanley.
Thank you. Thank you for taking this question. Of the number of currently licensed venues, how many do stay open until 1 a.m.?
In New Hampshire?
Yes.
I'm not really sure. That might be a good question for the Liquor Commission. I'm not sure if they have to actually announce that, 'cause I think it's their choice. I know that there's a place near me that, I live in Bethlehem, but in Littleton, there's a place, and they basically will stay open until 1 a.m. if there's demand there that night, but if it's dead at 12, then they just close down. So I imagine that that's probably the standard practice. I don't know, the Liquor Commission would be able to answer, but I don't know if they are required to say our hours are officially 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
Representative, you know what would have been more convincing for me is if I saw businesses here, if I saw bars here, like in the last couple of bills, we've had new bars coming. I didn't see any of them signing up testifying. Anyways, it would have been, if for the business part, it would have been really convincing. And they said if we were open, we'd do more business and we could get things thriving. Your argument was good. I just wish they had backed you up a little. But
Fair enough.
not your fault. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks.
Captain Steve? Captain Steve. There you go. Sloper? What's your last name? I forget. I'm sorry. Thank you. I didn't want to say it wrong. It's so small.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll be brief. State police have taken a neutral. Although we appreciate the. Thank you. Although we appreciate the potential of creating more commerce in the state of New Hampshire, there are several other bills moving forward, it's my understanding, regarding highway safety, that this bill could degrade those bills that we have moving forward. Allowing the extended hours could obviously pose a risk to public safety. These proposed extended hours of alcohol service can lead to an increase in alcohol-related incidents such as drunk driving, violence, and public disturbances. This also puts a significant strain on the law enforcement community that we already know is significantly strained with the shortages of manpower. This bill will not only likely see an increase of impaired drivers, but it will also likely see an increase of wrong-way drivers, serious bodily injury crashes, and possibly fatalities as well, with the extended hours of consuming alcohol and getting behind the wheel. In closing, I would just say, as far as state police is concerned, we're more concerned with sending the wrong message that we condone excessive drinking and driving with these extended hours. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Seeing no questions, you have a great day.
Thank you.
Appreciate your coming in. Does anyone else wish to testify on 1227? Morning again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and honorable committee members. Sorry about that. Again, for the record, Chief Mark Armaganian, Director of the Liquor Commission's Enforcement and Licensing Division. With me today is Deputy Chief Danielle Elston, Deputy Director of the same. As we looked at this proposed bill, and to be totally upfront about it, we have done some great work with both representatives, and totally candid about this. This is, as some of us have spoken, this is something that can happen today, with just notifying the Liquor Commission and local jurisdictions of what they're looking for. I think when we move forward, if we move forward with this proposed bill, you're taking away local control. The municipalities in our state want to say in alcohol use in their areas. And with this in mind, there are only 3 jurisdictions right now that actually have opted into this endeavor being open until 2 o'clock. Being Berlin, Laconia in the Weirs area, and Charitable Gaming down in Nashua. So what we look at this is actually an unfunded, could possibly be an unfunded mandate. I think you'll find that your municipal jurisdictions will look at this as a budget issue. Because like Representative Sullivan just stated in his examples, we're looking at the largest possible problems that could happen. But realistically, like Senator Innes just said, we have to monitor prior to being there. And monitoring means more troopers on the road, more investigators on the street in the establishments, more municipal police officers and county police officers to monitor that everybody who partakes in these venues does it in a safe fashion. So as we look at it, and to date myself, being I think most of you know, I was a trooper prior to this job, and worked midnights out on this strip of highway for 6 years in the early 90s. Traffic dwindles off quite drastically after 3 o'clock. Where the state police at the time was able to operate with a lower budget because it didn't cost as much to monitor. We use Nashville as an example. Being down there myself, if you saw in the center of Broadway all those police officers that hover in that area, all I looked at is, oh my gosh, that would cost me a lot of money to do. And as all of you know, we at the Liquor Commission try to be as fiscally responsible as possible and try to do this in the lowest dollar amount that we can do this. So there are a couple items that really brought concern to us. Again, public safety is paramount here, but as we look at it, and Danielle can speak more to this point because she has been dealing with it on an individual basis. This isn't something that has been sought after, and they can do it now. All they have to do is ask with no monetary obligation. So if you don't all mind, I'll pass the baton over to Danielle.
Good morning. I think it is critical to point out, because you won't see it in the amendment. So while these extend the serving hours until 2 a.m., the law also authorizes patrons to consume that alcohol 30 minutes after closing time. So realistically, you can serve till 2 a.m., but you would be able to consume till 2:30 a.m. And if the municipalities opted in under the new law, they could serve till 3. Patrons could drink until 3:30. So it is, you got to also account for that extra half hour. Per the statute and administrative rule, if there's a particular event or holiday that licensees would like to extend their serving hours, they are able to request that through the commission. We do this often for St. Patrick's Day, New Year's Eve. We've seen some extension of hours during 4th of July season. So if there is a particular event where they want to extend those service hours, they can simply request that through the commission. And there's been very few times that we've denied those extension requests. So that is an option for these individual licensees who would like to extend that for a particular event. And then, just going back to what the chief said, this is already an option. They can already opt into 2 a.m. and we only have 3 municipalities in the state that do that.
Very good. Senator Shanley?
Thank you. And you partially answered the question I asked last time, because only 3 communities have opted into the 2 a.m. Do you have any sense of how many licensed venues in the state do stay open even till 1 a.m.?
It's hard to put an exact number on it because we don't require them to report their open hours to us. We see it more in the larger municipalities, Manchester, Nashua, Salem's, areas where there's a big downtown. We will see the majority of those licensees stay open till 1 a.m. But it also varies. We have many in those same areas that don't open on Sundays or Mondays at all, or they close, at 10 p.m. So it varies statewide. But we do, I would say over 50% of the licensees in the state do stay open until 1 a.m. We do have, and we staff for that throughout the week to monitor those hours of sale.
And if I might follow up, people can request, outfits can request an extension for certain days. Is there any practice where they do that seasonally? Say, for example, our season, we do concerts every Friday night during the summer. Can we stay open?
They could request that. We haven't seen them request it seasonally. We haven't received any of those seasonal requests, but that could be something that they could present to the commission and could be considered.
Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, thank you both. Mike Summers.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Mike Summers. I'm the president and CEO of the New Hampshire Lodging and Restaurant Association. I just wanted to share a couple of thoughts and concepts with you. Some has already been touched on already. But just broadly, before this bill was heard in the House Commerce Committee, we surveyed our membership. We have about 1,300 members all corners of the state. And it wasn't a glowing mandate one way or the other. About 60% were opposed to the change and about 40% were in support. So kind of a 50-50 split or close to it. But the one thing that I think I would raise as a concern is this committee just last week moved forward a bill that raises the penalty for overservice by 300%. And now we're going to consider moving the goalposts from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. or potentially 3 a.m. I'm not sure that that is necessarily a synonymous message, so I would just raise that as a thought or concern. The one thing that doesn't usually get discussed in this issue, which I think is important for our industry with the cost of everything rising as quickly as it is, if we do this, this will without a doubt raise business liability insurance. And regardless of whether you actually decide to stay open till 1 or 2 a.m., it doesn't matter. It's going to impact the entire system. So I raise that as a concern because in discussions with our board, that's one that was raised as well. And then obviously I would just reiterate, which I think has been mentioned a couple of times, that municipalities can already take it to 2 a.m. now, which seems reasonable if that is the decision locally. I'm not sure that 3 or 3:30 in the morning is necessarily a necessity for the state of New Hampshire. But with that, I will close and be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. Seeing no questions, have a great day.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to I'm sorry, did you? Anyone else wish to testify on 1227? Seeing none? Representative Barry in the room? Oh, it's not Hunt again, come on. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Representative Erica Leon, representing the town of Derry. All three co-sponsors of House Bill 1321 are currently in executive sessions, and therefore I'm here to introduce their bill.
Thank you, Representative Leon. We're good. Andrew Provencher. Good morning, Mr. Provencher.
For the record, Andrew Provencher with the New Hampshire Brewers Association, our executive director. For the record, Andrew Provencher with the Brewers Association. Our executive director, CJ Haynes, is not going to be here today. She's away, so we'll be testifying. Along with me is Kirsten Neves from Tuckerman Brewing Company. We are in support of House Bill 1321. We'll let Kirsten talk to you a little bit about the impact that these keg tags have and the value of removing this piece.
Hi, my name is Kirsten Neves. I'm co-founder and owner of Tuckerman Brewing Company in Conway, New Hampshire, and president of the New Hampshire Brewers Association. I'm here today in support of HB 1321. We believe that keg tags should be eliminated for the following reasons. They're very time consuming to fill out, especially on busy days, which is usually when a customer comes in to pick up a keg. We have to go to the liquor store to pick up the keg books. They can't be mailed to us. When we get to the liquor store, we have to find a manager, and it's a very time-consuming process of issuing the keg books to us. And the books need to be checked when we get audited by the Liquor Commission, which puts extra time and energy for both us and the Liquor Commission to do that process. The keg tags themselves are attached to the keg with glue that is of some sort of super strength, superhuman strength glue. So they're like almost impossible to remove from the keg. And a lot of times you end up damaging the outside of the keg just trying to remove them. But overall, we just don't feel like they're necessary. We card people when they buy a beer of any package size. And then the keg tag requirement is a little strange too, that it's only required of a larger 15.5 gallon keg that the keg tag be issued, but they're not required for the 5.16 keg, which is a more popular size with customers. So it's just a lot of extra steps for just one package size, and we just don't really think it's necessary.
Thank you both. Any questions?
Only other thing I would just quickly add is the second part of this bill talks about scrapyard dealers, and it looks a little confusing. But what the situation was, there was a RSA that was recorded in there with the definition of keg. That was this is now repealing that RSA. So we've just inserted a new definition to keg in regards to if someone was to bring a brewery keg, and a scrapyard dealer wouldn't be able to accept that.
Very good. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Have a good day. Anyone else wish to testify? I figured you did, but I try not to assume.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and honorable committee members. For the record, Chief Mark Armaganian, Director of the Liquor Commission's Enforcement and Licensing Division. With me again is Lieutenant Matt Culver, who's in charge of our administrative services and licensing. As we testified on this bill back in the House, we look at this as time to clean up. We have remained neutral on this for reasons that Matt will explain. I hate to use the phrase back in the day, but back in the day, it was an investigative tool that has really not proven itself over the years. So as we look at it, it again is something that the state and the division specifically has to spend money on to print out. It's money that can be used in other resources. So I'll leave the intricacies to Matt to explain. But again, we remain neutral on this and look at this as just cleaning up old business.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. Again, my name is Lieutenant Matthew Culver, New Hampshire State Liquor Commission, Division of Enforcement and Licensing. The provisions of 179.5A is really our interest in this, not so much the scrap metal, but the attachment it has to the prohibited sale statute in 179.5. The intent, I believe, when this legislation was passed, was to offer an investigative tool for mainly underage drinking parties, that you could identify the whereabouts where the cake came from and who purchased that cake. But as we all know, the first thing you do when you purchase a cake is put it in a bucket of ice. And although the testimony is correct that there is some super strength glue that is put on these things, that they the keg tag itself does not come off, but most of the lettering does, to be honest with you. In a long story short, really what this comes down to is that although with great intent when this legislation was passed, it has become ineffective. In 16 years of being in the Liquor Commission, and 10 years prior to that being in local law enforcement, I've never investigated a case by utilizing a keg tag.
Okay. Seeing no questions, thank you both. Oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
Is there anything that's just going to replace the tracking of them, a barcode or anything, or is that not even necessary?
Well, when they're sold, the reporting of that is already notified to the commission. So,
Okay.
yes. Yep.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to testify on 1321? Going, gone. It's nothing new. I saw something, but I don't know if it's what you were talking about. The Dems put up. Growlers.
Representative Turcotte is not here, but Representative Ammon is introduced.
Okay. Representative Ammon, they're telling me you have a lot of familiarity with growlers. And you'd be the one to introduce the bill. So. Plus you're in the front row and you're here, so all works out. Thank you. Good morning,
Mr. Chair.
Representative.
Good morning, committee members. So I'm more of a whiskey drinker than a beer drinker, but
okay,
for the record. Okay. Good morning, committee members and Mr. Chairman. My name is Keith Ammon. I represent Hillsborough District 42. That's the towns of New Boston, Mount Vernon, and Lineborough. And I'm here to introduce House Bill 1334. It's an act relative to the sale of beer in refillable containers, commonly known as growlers. So a growler is a reusable glass, ceramic, or stainless steel bottle, typically holding 64 ounces of beer. Customers bring these containers to a brewery filled with fresh craft beer to take home. This bill clarifies the existing law to help our local microbreweries better serve their growler customers. So it does, there's five points I want to make. Last term, the New Hampshire Liquor Commission attorney indicated that breweries are able to fill growlers with their beer regardless of the branding. However, some brewers still believe they cannot do this, so the legislature should clarify this point. Second, this bill codifies that any brewer may, at their discretion, fill a growler with their beer regardless of branding. It is permissive, not a requirement. Most brewers care more about satisfying their customers than the growler logo. They know what beer they are filling and the customers know what they are buying. Fourth point, this bill promotes sustainability by encouraging growler reuse and reducing waste from single-use containers. So it's a small but meaningful environmental benefit. And lastly, the bill has support. The House Commerce Committee added a clarifying amendment bolstering its effectiveness. So in summary, this practical clarification gives brewers certainty that they can fill branded growlers from other breweries. It helps small brewers, improves the customer experience, reduces waste, and fosters a competitive, innovative beer market that can increase sales and jobs. So I ask for your support for 1334, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Turcotte had informed me he'd have samples for us all, but I'm seeing none at the moment.
Yeah, that's
okay.
He's got some recurrent training that he had to do today, so he wasn't able to be here.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
All right.
Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone else wish to testify on 1334? Seeing none? I'm still behind. Last but not least, my friend Representative Wallace is coming on up. Good to see you this morning, Representative. No samples from you either, jeez. Can't win today.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Gannon, Vice Chair Ricciardi, and members of the Senate Commerce Committee. For the record, my name is Scott Wallace, representative from Rockingham County District 8, the town of Danville. And I'm here to introduce my hobby distillation of spirits bill, House Bill 1624. Hobby distillation is making progress across the country. There's presently 9 states in which it's lawful. 8 years ago, when I started this project, there was only one, Missouri. At this point in time, it's a natural progression of the Craft Brewing Act, which was signed into law by President Carter in 1978, which made making wine and beer at home lawful. But that only became lawful here in New Hampshire in 2013. So this is the next progression of the hobby, if you will, and this would allow New Hampshire residents to make a very small amount of hard liquor from the wine and beer that's already lawful to make. So to be clear, only the quantity of liquor that can be produced from the already lawful 100 or 200 gallons of wine or beer could be distilled, which would yield roughly 10 to 20 gallons if you did a full production run of 100 or 200 gallons. As an amateur eventer, it's a lot of work. The best yield I've ever had was about 45 gallons in 1 year, and that still takes quite a bit of time. I've been working this very diligently over the last 8 years with Liquor Commission, and I'm happy to report that at this point in time, I believe they're going to be neutral on this when they've been opposed diametrically in the past. So I believe that we've clarified, as evidenced by the bill passing unanimously on the consent calendar in the House, and that's, an order, that's complete turnaround from when we first started talking about this. I won't take up a lot of your time. I've sent you a lot of information to digest via email, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any particular questions about the hobby.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you. I do have, what kinds of liquor do you produce from beer and wine?
That would be whiskey. It's a malt beverage, so you're correct.
Thank you.
Yeah. And of course, brandies from wine, and your other liquors are usually produced from a neutral wash, would be like rice, which, if you could take beer and make that into a neutral spirit as well. Pretty much anything with an alcohol content can be distilled and refined to extract the base.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Ricciardi.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm just clarifying, I do see it's liquor production for personal or family use. So it's not, you're not going to be selling it to anybody.
Absolutely not. This is correct.
Okay.
This is exactly how you can make your own wine and beer presently. It's only for personal consumption, family use. You can bring it to competitions, if you will, but nothing can be sold.
Okay. So when I was a kid growing up being Greek, my father made the wine. They literally were outside. We looked, the neighbors, I don't know what they thought. Lamb on a spit in a suburban neighborhood and barrels of wine.
Sounds like good living.
Thank you, Representative. We're all set. Have a
Thank
good day. Kate Fry.
Morning again, members of the committee. For the record, I'm Kate Fry from New Futures. This is another bill that brought me inner struggle today. And in speaking very briefly with the sponsors, very knowledgeable in this issue, the largest concern we have is just the safety of the product. When we talk about methanol and alcohol poisoning, I'm realizing that this is a little bit different, that it's coming from beer or wine. And I do appreciate the fact that it's not for resale. There's a federal law against it, but there are other 9 states, the sponsor told me, had moved in this direction. So I just have concerns again about the safety of the product that I feel I need to bring to the attention of the committee.
Thank you, Ms. Fry. Any questions? Seeing none, have a great day. Does anyone else wish to testify on 1624? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing. If we can do 2, I just want to do 2. I want to do
Executive session.
Second.
Second.
Yeah. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Ayes have it. We'll start with, 1559 for no reason. Let's see, the cash dispensing machines, if we remember, I think it was a week ago we did this.
Second.
Second, I won't talk long enough then. No problem in 20 years, the fees cost too much, banking was in favor of the bill. We have a not to pass motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed?
Move consent. Second.
All in favor of the consent motion?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? You can. Thank you. We're gonna hear 1172 next, which, or is that the wrong one? Am I backwards? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we're gonna, no, that one I'm gonna. 1072 I want to do, and that would be the only
No.
other one.
There is no 1072.
It was the meeting of the condo board. 1172. 1172, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The meeting of the condo boards, they were moving, notice from 7 to 5 days. Wasn't too much to it. I sort of have some intrepidation because I tend to own condos from far away. And, but it was more on, quick meetings. It wasn't on major issues. It was on small issues. So I didn't mind that so much. Anyone else wish to discuss? Have a motion? Do I have a not to pass motion from anyone? Or a change?
So moved.
Okay. So we have a motion for ought to pass. Any other discussion? All in favor of the ought to pass motion? Aye. Opposed? All in favor of the consent?
Aye.
Anyone wish to take this out? Senator Ennis, thank you very much. And that's all we're going to exec today. Thank you very much. Do I have a motion?
To come out of executive session.
Second.
Seconded by Senator Susie. All in favor?
Aye.
Move to adjourn.
Move to adjourn. Aye. Thank you all.
All right.